Good evening to everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order. The Monday, March 27, 2023 meeting of the Falls Church City Council. We're delighted you all are with us this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to ask that you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a few children in the audience who've been gracious enough to offer to lead us in that. So if you'd like, we're going to follow their lead. The flag is behind me.
Right up to the microphone. There you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, nice job, everyone. I got pins for you if you want to come on up. You want to give them? Tell you what, why don't you go give those to them when they're done, too.
There we go.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to adoption of the meeting agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the meeting agenda as amended to bring item 10B2 up on our agenda to be 6C.
All right, hold that thought because we need to do roll call first. So
sorry.
my
Thank
apologize.
you. No worries.
Made
We're
me
having
jump,
a little
sorry.
All right, Madam Clerk.
difficulty. Ms. Conley? Here. Mr. Duncan?
Yes, here.
Ms. Hardy? Here. Ms. Leon?
Here.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Here.
Mr. Snyder? Here. And Mayor Tarter?
Here.
Thank you, Council.
All right, let's go on to that. My apologies.
Once more with feeling.
Yes.
So we're moving 10B2 up to 6C. Move to adopt the meeting agenda as reflecting that change.
Second.
All right, Ms. Hiscott on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. We have an agenda. So we've got a very special evening before us. Earlier this evening, we had a recognition, a reception for the Employees of the Year the past 2 years, and they're here with us today. Our Director of HR, Steve Mason, is going to tell us a little bit more about them, but it was quite an honor to spend time with them earlier, and look forward to doing so again right now. Mr.
Good
Mason?
evening. Good evening, Mayor Tarter and members of City Council. My name is Steve Mason. I am the city's Human Resources Director, and I am here to be a part of a great achievement for two employees that will be named Employee of the Year for 2020 and 2021, respectively. The members of the Employee Review Board will talk a little bit about the recipients, but I will briefly tell you about the other nominees. I characterize both years as the years of the pandemic, as the nominees went above and beyond the call of duty in their areas of expertise to ensure the city continued its great services to all who live, work, and visit us. So in 2020, there were 3 nominations of Employee of the Year: Joe Carter, Steve Helfer, and Akita Ruzzi. Now, I will read short excerpts from the nominations for the 2 employees that were not selected, and then Employee Review Board member Joe Rollo will talk about the 2020 winner, Joe Carter. Akita Ruzzi was nominated for her expertise, organization in execution and timeliness, creativity and problem solving, and a professional bearing as an urban planner for the city. At the time of the nomination, Akita had dual responsibilities as a principal planner and deputy zoning administrator. Akita's nominator stated that Akita served a pivotal lead role in 3 highly visible community revitalization efforts of varying scales: the Broad and Washington redevelopment, Scramble Falls Church, an indoor play space for kids, and the rejuvenation of Mr. Brown's Park. Further, the nominator stated, "It's easy to see Akita's leadership in all of these revitalization and community building efforts." Akita is documented in staff reports to council and boards and commission as the lead project planner, and the video recordings of council and board and commission meetings capture Akita's presentation and interaction with council, providing critical information for decision-making and refining the project proposals. The second was Steve Helfer. Steve was nominated for his work as the single inspector handling all inspections for the then new Meridian High School. Steve's nominator stated that Steve's role was to work with the contractors, the school system, and the design team on a daily basis to ensure that all phases of construction met the Virginia Building Code. Further, the nominator stated Steve Helfer was a valuable asset to the contractor and school system with his ability to navigate through the code books, plans, and design documents. It was Steve's commitment and perseverance that the school was able to open on schedule. Now I'll ask Joe Rollo, who is a member of the Employee Review Board, to come forward.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, turn the mic.
Thanks. I think I have it. Mayor Tarter, excuse me, members of the council, and certainly Falls Church city government, families, and friends. For some people, 2020 is a distant memory. For most of us, however, it represents a time of remarkable sacrifices, challenges, and yes, resiliency. It is within the context of these challenges that we, the Falls Church community, relied on so many of you who are sitting in these chambers this evening. For his commitment to the many responsibilities that became a part of his so-called job description, the 2020 Employee of the Year Award recipient is Joe Carter. In the words of Scarlett Williams, Special Events Project Supervisor and City Resident, Joe was the tip of the spear in the city's response to the COVID pandemic, which was nothing short of heroic. Joe has served tirelessly to prioritize the health and safety of every resident and public servant in the city of Falls Church. He's been a tireless advocate and voice of the city's workforce. These are just a handful of his accomplishments. Developing new human resource policies, setting up protective safety glass for workplace counters, establishing security protocols within City Hall, allocating PPE supplies for frontline workers, coordinating multiple Fairfax Health COVID-19 vaccination clinics and testing sites within the city limits, providing numerous safety talks to various community groups, and importantly, delivering personal protection gear to some of our most vulnerable residents. Joe has demonstrated an altruistic commitment to deliver emergency services in these difficult times. The tasks associated with adapting an entire city workforce and community's daily practices to the unexpected conditions in unprecedented ways has, to be sure, a Herculean task. His workload and scale of responsibilities necessary to manage the pandemic crisis, sometimes in tandem with other confounding emergencies, has been a constant for more than 2 years. He has never wavered from his mission in keeping the lives and livelihood of city residents and employees healthy and safe.
Joe?
It is a great pleasure for me to present Joe Carter with the 2020 Falls Church City Employee of the Year Award. Where are you? The hug was gratuitous.
Sure. First of all, yeah, I mean, COVID came on us really quickly. I think we all know that. And as you can see, not just COVID, but other city employees as well had to continue to do their job to keep city services moving forward. So I am so honored to be able to accept this award for 2020. You know, like I said, of all the nominees, you know, there was definitely a team effort, leadership within Wyatt, Steve, Cindy, the COVID leadership team. It was definitely strategic thinking on everybody's part. And I'd like to think that, you know, I was a small part of that, and I appreciate the words that Joe mentioned, but it was definitely a team effort. And I'd also like to thank you, Council. You were very supportive throughout the whole pandemic. And I know, Mayor, you were on numerous calls each week with me in the Mayors and Chairs meeting. And to have that support from the top down, I think it was not only important for me as an employee, but for the entire city government. So I'd like to thank you as well. And lastly, I know they're not here. They had to go home early, but my family, there was months that we were doing 7-day work weeks. And you know, my wife's always been, she's always been supportive in that way, even when I was working with the police department, that she knows the job I have to do, and she was always willing to let me do that. So her allowing me to do that was a big part also of me being, doing a good job through the pandemic. So thank you. Once again, I'm really, really, truly honored, and I appreciate everything. Thanks.
Thank you. Why don't you come forward? We'll get a photo with you. Why don't you come on forward? We'll get a photo. But we are honored as well. I mean, you've really risen to the occasion, Joe. You know, these pandemics, they come once, who knows when, hopefully not very often, but when they do, you got to be prepared. And, you know, you were. I mean, that's what your job is, emergency preparation, emergency management. And you've helped save lives here in this community and keep people healthy and sound. So you have our gratitude, our undying gratitude. So thank you so much. And come on down, let's get a picture.
Now, in 2021, there were 3 nominations for Employee of the Year. There's one that I won't mention because he'll be a repeat, and that's Joe Carter. But Matt Brown was a nominee, and then I will have Employee Review Board member Leon Bethune to come up and talk about the 2021 winner, Veronica Price. Matt Brown, Prince. Jeez, sorry. Matt Brown was nominated for his positivity, extreme adaptability, and flexibility in taking on new roles throughout the pandemic. He took on new duties handling ADA compliance inspections and enforcement to further the city's walkability goals. Matt's nominator stated, "This level of technical expertise typically resides with the engineering division, and Matt's positive attitude, integrity, and dedication to the city to take on this responsibility allowed us to redistribute workloads while short-staffed to avoid hiring consultants." Matt takes his high standards to other departments as well. Through the pandemic and return to the office, he was always available to assist other departments as well. This showed many times when he assisted the city clerk in preparing for city council meetings, post legal notices, greet and guide visitors to the correct services, and other duties. Matt's can-do spirit is infectious, and he can turn a bad day into a good one. So that was Mr. Matt Brown. Now I'll ask Leanne to come forward.
Thank you very much. Mayor Tarter and council members, thank you for inviting me here this evening. I am thrilled to present Ms. Veronica Prince the award for the 2021 Employee of the Year. In 2021, advisory boards, commissions, and city council utilized an online meeting format that necessitated an ongoing need to comply with new and evolving public access laws. And Veronica took the initiative to not only learn and track those changes, but she also organized and led training sessions with staff liaisons throughout the year. She was single-handedly responsible for posting meeting notes, agendas, videos, and all other relevant documents following each of the more than 500 city council, advisory boards, and commission meetings held throughout the year. That important work allowed all members of our community to continue their participation in the Little City's democratic process by guaranteeing continuity of public access to important information. And her ability to manage and excel at this heavy workload during extremely challenging times is impressive in and of itself. But the knowledge that she took on these challenges, in addition to her regular workload and responsibilities that include FOIA, coordination, records management, and legislative administration, is nothing short of spectacular. So, Veronica, if you want to come up today.
All right, and as she's coming forward, I just want to mention that both of our winners are hometown folks, right? I think George Mason graduates, both of them. So local kids made good.
Wonderful. So, Veronica, your work in 2021 extended far beyond what might be expected of a deputy city clerk in our 2.2 square mile little city. And so, on behalf of the Falls Church community, please accept our gratitude for your dedicated work on its behalf and our congratulations on a job well done. Absolutely. Congratulations and thank you.
I don't have very much to say, but I wrote some notes here, so I'm going to try to read off of that. I just really appreciate all the work of our entire City of Falls Church team, particularly the staff liaisons, IT and FCC TV, the City Council, our board and commission members, and the entire community. Our staff took it really seriously and did the work that needed to be done throughout this, and it was, like the nomination, I think, and like was said, it was just always evolving, and there was a lot to figure out throughout it, and everybody just took it really seriously. They understood the importance of the access for the public, and our board and commission members in the city council followed all our guidelines. They helped us test systems, and were really patient with us as we worked through all the legal and technical details. And the public participated in the meetings, possibly more than even pre-pandemic, which was amazing, and just really made it show why we were doing all of this. And everyone was also so patient with us and working through everything, giving us feedback when we needed it to find out what, where we needed to do some extra work here or get some more publicity out about things. And that was really important. And we've really been able to carry this into a new level of transparency for the city. And I'm really just so thankful for everybody that's been on this journey with us. And I appreciate the nomination and the award. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Why don't you come forward? We'll get a photo with
Since I messed up her last name, I'm sure when it comes to a FOIA, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
All right, we got a proud husband and a proud mama back there. So a family affair. But Veronica, you've really helped us as a city council and as a government bring us into the modern age and the modern era where, previously everybody had to come to city council to participate in government. And that transition, for a while, everything shut down. We didn't know what to do. And then we sort of slowly came out of it, and things have evolved to, frankly, a much better place where people can come to the meeting like you're doing now. People can join remotely. And so we've got a broader audience, a broader appeal. And so we really thank you for taking us into the modern era and showing us the way to do it going forward. So thank you, Veronica. And thank you, Joe, again. You guys have done great work, and we're all very proud of the service you've done to this community. So thank you once again. All right, so our next order of business, as we amended the agenda, is to do with our new city attorney, which we are really excited to go ahead and announce today. And that person is Sally Gillette Hankins, who's with us right there in the white. And we will be having a formal approval of her in just a moment. But I want to just say we're so excited to have you. She's extremely well qualified, a lot of experience, I think perfect disposition, and just a wonderful person, I think, and a wonderful addition to our community and to our government. So with that, you're certainly welcome to say anything you'd like, but we're going to go ahead and formally approve you in just a second. But go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say thank you so much. It's an honor to be selected, and I'm thrilled to be working with all of you in the very near future. You have a wonderful community that I'm excited to become a part of, and I can't wait to get started. Thank you.
All right, well, be careful what you ask for, because we'll get you started sooner than you imagine. Do we have a or have a motion?
Mayor, I move to adopt TR 23-13.
All right,
Second.
Ms. Leon in the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right.
Thank you.
Come on down, let's get a picture with you. And I tell you, before we get off topic, I want to thank Brian, our interim city attorney, who's just done an absolute fabulous job. And the advice and the counsel that he's given and sort of stepped in very quickly and just been right at home here and just done a fabulous job. So I want to thank you for all the great work you've done in this short period of time. You've really been a seamless transition for us, and we're all most appreciative.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. It's been a wonderful time working here, even for a short period of time. I think you're stuck with me for one more meeting after this one, but after that, we'll be transitioning. But thank you again for having me for 7 months or so.
All right. Well, we'll keep working on you. Maybe we'll get you to be a resident of Falls Church. So, but thank you. You've done a great job. It's really been a pleasure working with you as well. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is oaths of office. Or no, I'm sorry, we got a proclamation here, World Art Day. And Ms. Hardy is going to do the honors.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Whereas World Art Day is an international celebration of the fine arts, which was declared by the International Association of Art in order to promote awareness of creative activity worldwide. And whereas through public art, local history can be uniquely celebrated, thereby illuminating a city's past and connecting it to the present and future. And whereas the City of Falls Church values art, as evidenced by enriching Falls Church in the public arts section of the Community Character, Appearance, and Design chapter of the city's comprehensive plan. And whereas the city's vision and guiding principles for public art includes commitments to the community, artists as contributors, storytelling, equity, and the natural environment. And whereas the benefits of public art span the economic, social, cultural, and health facets of the community. And whereas on April 15th, 2023, the city will celebrate World Art Day by highlighting local art found in the community via the city's newly established Art Walk.
Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim April 15th, 2023 as Falls Church World Art Day in the City of Falls Church and encourage residents to celebrate art found in the little city. Mr. Shields, is anyone here? Is Danny supposed to be here? Or
We actually have a member of the Arts and Humanities Council.
we do? Okay, all right. Well, come on down. Let's go ahead and, all of y'all, come on down. Let's go ahead and maybe do a quick photo. If you're certainly welcome to make any comments you'd like to make.
I'm Ari Autor. I'm one of the newer members at large, and I'm joined by Jacqueline Connolly, who's a student at Meridian High School, who's been our student liaison. She's been doing a fantastic job. We are working on the Art Walk together with Mary Sellers and Ms. Hardy. We're very grateful for the recognition of this important opportunity for the city. Creativity surrounds us. We're so lucky to have Falls Church Arts and so many other rich arts organizations and historical groups in the city. And we invite you to take a look at the Art Walk website and join us on World Art Day or anytime at your convenience and seeing some of the wonderful works that surround us. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't you all come on down? We'll take a photo. We'll give you the proclamation.
I was going to share that here's kind of the official unveiling of the Art Walk plaques, which will be on all, I think, 40 pieces of public art we have in town before April 15th. So you guys can hold it.
So before we move on, yesterday was the birthday of Dan Z, our departed colleague, and I just thought we'd maybe have a moment of silence in Dan's memory and remember Dan and his many accomplishments here in the city. Thank you. Okay, let's keep on moving. Are there any oaths of office to administer, Madam Clerk?
I don't believe so unless there's anybody in the audience who knows they need an oath. No,
All right.
sir.
How about, let's move on to written comment or public comment, starting with summary of written comments.
Yes, the Broadway Condominium T-Zone Task Force provided comments regarding proposed T-Zone changes and the potential impact of such changes on the Broadway condominium. Delegate Kathy K. L. Tron, on behalf of the members of the Virginia Asian American and Pacific Islander Caucus, requested in-language outreach to the Eden Center and development of an anti-displacement approach to planning efforts in the area. The caucus also supports renaming Wilson Boulevard to Saigon Boulevard. Jeff Price wrote with concerns about development and the destruction of a neighboring home for new home construction. Bob Kravinsky of 215 West Columbia Street supports efforts to provide diverse and equitable housing options in the city and urged council to take a step back from proposed T-zone changes that may not produce the type of housing that was being sought. Amy Crumpton sends her apologies. She's the chair of the Urban Forestry Commission, whose annual report is provided in the agenda package tonight. She is unable to join us, but she wrote in support of a senior urban forester position and funding for a comprehensive tree inventory in the budget. And that was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to the receipt of public comment. Are there any speakers signed up to speak this evening?
We don't have anybody signed up to speak now. Thank you.
All right, well, anyone who's not signed up, you're also welcome to speak should you so desire. The speaker slips are out in the lobby if you want to speak at any time tonight. All right, let's move on then. Urban forestry is not going to happen tonight. Let's go on to council requests. Are there any council requests at this point? Ms. Hardy?
Thank you. Mr. Shields, you've moved positions. So I know we've got two troublesome intersections, one at Lincoln Great Falls and one at Hillwood and Annandale. So, perhaps as part of your manager's report, you're planning on updating us, but I'd like to know what the latest is on that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hardy. We do have some signals that are out at the present time, and we're working with the contractors to get those back in service. Great Falls and Lincoln is an intersection that the signals have been on flash mode for over a week, and we've had to call in the manufacturer of the signal equipment there to diagnose what exactly the issue is there. We do not currently have an ETA for that restoration, so we ask for community to bear with us and to treat that intersection as a four-way stop until that issue is resolved. It does have our full attention, but the issue has been one that our contractor has not been able to resolve yet.
And what about Hillwood and Annandale? Is that one?
So that is a slightly different issue. That's a much older signal box, and that's just a question of getting the equipment in, and that signals generally have been a victim of supply chain disruptions, and so that equipment is on order, and we expect that signal will be operational soon.
Okay. Got it. So I recall in the last budget amendment, we had deployed additional dollars towards signals. Is there anything else we can do? Because I was actually at one of those intersections this morning and nearly got hit because people were not obeying the four-way stop. And so I imagine that's not a unique thing that's happening.
So it's a serious problem, and it is a priority to get these fixed. The council has appropriated funds, so it's not a budget issue. It is it's a question of working with our vendors and getting the equipment on site to get these to get these fixed.
So I guess in the interim, I'd ask maybe communications to step up just more awareness about how to treat kind of flashing reds, and then to the extent possible to send police out during kind of high pedestrian periods, especially like school pickup and drop-off times,
right,
to make sure those intersections are as safe as possible. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Leon?
Mr. Shields, been made aware that the neighbors of Fellows Park were provided communication around the Fellows property being kind of an equipment storage area as part of the pipe bursting project. I'd like to request that, if there's any way we could, send a broader communication out, especially since it's close to Oak Street, right? You've got a lot of traffic with children there, but the surrounding neighborhoods, maybe through the Falls Church, Focus on Falls Church newsletter, but just building that awareness in addition to just those residences that back into the property.
So that's understood. Our project manager, Mr. Lionel Millard, has been doing a lot of community outreach just to speak with the immediate neighbors, and we will increase the communication for the broader community, and also just make sure that the school community is aware of what's happening with the pipe bursting project. We are seeking to minimize any disruptions to Fellows Park and with any project to stay out of green space. The trade-offs are then the equipment has to be stored in front of people's houses. So we're trying to find the right balance between the two. But Mr. Millard has been very energetic and working both with the neighbors and the contractor to try to get this done as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I saw him out there, if I remember him correctly. So I just think it's just important to make sure that it's a greater blast. And just to confirm, is the usage of that site going to run through 2024?
So I don't have that information just in terms of what the exact plans are. I can get that information to the council, and that'll be part of our broader communication, obviously, as well. People need to know what the duration would be. Right now, with that project, the major impacts are on West Street, and we do have a lane closed off and a rerouting of traffic. We're keeping traffic flowing through West Street, but it is certainly impactful for the traveling public and for the neighbors as we go through that. Just sort of judging by our pace of work on Parker, we will try to set good expectations with the neighbors in terms of when the new pipe will be in and the street will be closed back up again so that they can plan accordingly.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Let's keep moving then. Let's go on to the report of the city manager, Mr. Shields.
Well, thank you, Mayor Tarter and members of council. So for the report of the city manager tonight, I'll take our time to present our proposed FY24 operating budget and capital improvements plan. And I've got a slideshow that if Ms. Koshore could pull that up, and we'll walk through about 20 slides on the general government proposed budget. And then we are also joined by our colleagues with the school board. We have Chair Laura Downs, who is here, and our Superintendent Noonan, and they will present the school board's budget request. So first, Ms. Kutcher, we'll start with the city manager's slides. And as those are getting keyed up for the presentation, I do want to just say a few words of thanks to, I get to advance the slides. Thank you. So first, let me just say it's an honor to be before you to begin the process of working through plans for the coming year. We do have a growing city. People can see that with the construction activity that we just were talking about a moment ago. People can see that with the construction cranes that are throughout the city. People can see that with the transformative capital improvements program that we'll be discussing tonight. And so growing with vision is an organizing principle of how we've developed the budget this year. So we'll talk about the initiatives that are aligned with that vision. We'll talk about tax rates and fees, and then we'll talk about the schedule and the process going forward. Then we'll be joined by our colleagues with the school board to give an overview of the budget request from the schools, and then a discussion from there. Oops. There we go. Thank you. So our first slide, before I launch in, I would like to just make a few words of thanks. Our finance director, Kieran Bawa, is at the center of all of our financial planning. And Melissa Ryman, our deputy chief of finance, is our guru who knows all the numbers and where all the pennies are across the city. And we really could not do this work without Melissa. Our great CIP team, and when we talk about the CIP, you'll see what an important and transformative capital improvements program it is, led by Cindy Mester. And we've been doing having the benefit of a great work by Caitlin Sopsey. And at your next work session on the 3rd, Caitlin will actually be presenting the CIP to you. And we'll talk about just an overview of it tonight. But I also want to thank OCOM. Susan and Maggie have been working with finance and with me just on thinking about communications over the whole budget consideration period of time. And we'll talk about steps in that, but also just getting information out through one-pagers, through our local newspaper, and through really great budget videos. There's a CIP budget video that we'll point the public to, and we'll have our departments and our constitutional officers all produced a budget video as well that will provide about a 2 to 4 minute overview of each departmental budget. So thank you for all the people who have been involved in this. So we'll start with some numbers. Overall, the general government budget is proposed at $48.3 million for FY24, which represents about a 5.25% increase over the prior year. The school transfer, which you'll hear about in more detail, following the principles of revenue sharing. As the council is aware, revenues did grow between the period of budget guidance, which was done in December, and March, once the assessments were finalized and once we finalized our revenue projections. So what we've built in, or what I've built into the budget before you, is a school transfer amount that reflects those principles of revenue sharing, and so the school transfer would grow also at about a 5.25%. The budget has a number of fee-supported initiatives, and those include building permit fees to manage the construction activity across the city. But we'll also talk about traffic calming and using camera technology for speed enforcement. And we'll talk about how those fees or violation revenues will fund some of our initiatives as well. Pay-as-you-go capital is an important part of our budget, with $1.5 million going towards maintaining our facilities, our fleet, and other one-time expenditures. Our debt service is declining slightly next year, just due to the normal amortization of debt. We are not proposing the issuance of any new general fund supported debt next year or the year after, and we'll talk more about that with the CIP. And the capital reserves, they are a slight increase of $180,000 for our capital reserves. However, of that $4.68 million for capital reserves, a good bit of that is being deployed through the pay-as-you-go budget as well, as we begin for the first time to draw down reserves for pay-as-you-go capital. So I spoke at the beginning about the organizing principle of this budget being growing with vision. And growing with vision, we'll talk about kind of what that means in a lot of different contexts, but clearly it means upholding excellent core government services, sustaining our award-winning city schools. We'll talk about their transformative CIP and the resources we need to execute that, advancing community priorities through the council's work plan and through the adopted comprehensive plan, and all the while maintaining a very fiscally sound operation. As mentioned, there's no issuance of new debt that's supported by the general fund in this proposed budget, and we do have a lot of grants that we're bringing into the city. One of the top priorities in this year's budget is investing in our city workforce. And investing in the city workforce means both compensation and learning and development. But even before you get to those things, a high-performing culture really depends on a spirit of service in our workforce that I think we all saw evidence of tonight with our Employees of the Year. the very strong relationships we build amongst each other on our workforce, but also with community, and continual learning and development. In terms of competitive compensation, the City Council reviewed our compensation and classification study that came out in November of last year. The budget fully implements the recommendations from that study. And in addition to that, as a market adjustment, we're proposing in this budget a 6% merit increase. And a merit increase means you do need to complete your annual evaluation and have a satisfactory result from that annual evaluation before receiving this proposed increase. The police are on a COLA and STEP program, but taken together, those average a 6% increase for a police department as well. And the budget steps up our budget for professional development at a level of $107,000 in FY24. So growing with vision, one of the things that means is growing together, and the council's priority for equity and inclusion. The budget includes $120,000 that's built into the tax rate for affordable housing. That includes expanding the rental subsidy program to include subsidies so that families that are in the ADU program can achieve or have access to housing in the city if those households are at 30 to 40% of AMI. We have $20,000 for emergency rent assistance. This is a continuation of work we did throughout the pandemic, and because the state has ended its support, we are asking to have draws on our ARPA allocations to help those in need. The Community Services Fund has identified needs in partnership with our NGO community, and those would be funded at $116,000 with a combination of local and ARPA dollars. And then, of course, we're using CDBG funds as planned for the maintenance and upkeep of our Virginia Village properties. The CIP, as was done last year, is developed with an equity lens, so we're really thinking about where our investments across the city are going, and particularly trying to bring in communities that have been underserved historically with things like sidewalks and other infrastructure in the city. Growing with vision means growing green, and our environmental sustainability plan touches all of operations of the city government. Really importantly, right now, we have our community energy plans that are under development now, and those are going to inform future budget decisions as we implement those action plans. But the CIP is also developed with an environmental impact lens with our stormwater programs, both helping us with resilience against flooding, but also implementing green infrastructure as identified by our Stormwater Task Force, now our PUC. We're working towards our conversion to electric fleet. We had a great ceremony just 2 weeks ago or last week about our bus conversion to electric vehicles, but we've also gone out to get grants to help our DPW fleet both get chargers installed at the property yard, but also to purchase electric and hybrid vehicles in our DPW operations. $200,000 is in the tax rate or in the pay-as-you-go part of the budget for fleet modernization. On the sanitary sewer side, backflows in people's basements. This has been a concern during flooding events in the past, and the CIP funds efforts to reduce inflow and infiltration that's the cause of that. We also have some placeholders for solar arrays on city facilities so that putting it in our plan will help us go out and get grant dollars to help execute those plans. Growing with vision means growing safely. And so one of the things that's funded in the budget is an additional school resource officer. It was funded this year with a grant, and now we're converting to bringing that into the tax rate essentially and have that funded locally. The Mental Health Response Initiative. We've been working with our mental health therapist at the Aurora House so that she can serve the police department when we respond to critical incidences with individuals that are having a mental health crisis. It's a very innovative approach to this. We still work with Fairfax County on their larger program, but to have that local resource deployed with our police is something that we're funding in this budget. Camera enforcement. We're adding an additional photo red intersection and new speed enforcement cameras, as discussed at work session about 2 months ago. In building safety, council funded additional positions last year to make sure that we're managing all the construction activity across the city safely and effectively. This budget includes 2 new positions, a right-of-way inspector and an additional fire inspector. We currently have 1 fire inspector. We would increase that with a part-time position. Those are both paid for largely with fees. In the area of IT, we do have funding in the CIP for IT renewal, really to protect us against cyber attacks and other vulnerabilities. So we'll discuss that in the IT, in the CIP, and our fire station improvements is an ongoing investment in partnership with Arlington County. Growing with vision means growing more walkable and more bikeable. Our 6-year CIP includes $93 million in transportation improvements, the majority of which are grant funded. In FY24, built into the tax rate is $167,000 for new sidewalks and streetlights. That's a continuation of that pay-as-you-go effort, and $200,000 for the neighborhood traffic calming program. We do fund in this budget the Transportation Safety Rapid Response Crew, which the council funded with one-time money in the current year, and now we're sustaining that into the future and building that into the core operating budget going forward. And this budget also sustains this infrastructure maintenance that we've built into pay-as-you-go as well for paving, traffic signal maintenance, what we were discussing just a moment ago, and sidewalk maintenance. Growing with vision means growing the economy, and some of the examples of that is working with the EDA on the tourism grants that we've recently obtained. Those are in the budget. In addition, with the availability of federal and state grants, we're asking for an additional position in the city to help us administer those grants and also do some succession planning and some internal promotions to sustain our CIP program. Downtown beautification, we sustain that with a portion of the hotel tax for flower baskets and tree lighting and the things that you see very visible in our commercial districts. And then one thing we do want to talk about with the CIP is we are proposing $9.3 million in a payment to, with Fairfax County for the purchase of additional treatment capacity to help us handle the growth that is occurring in the west end of town. That additional treatment capacity is something that is paid for with those one-time connection fees that developers pay. So growing with vision means preserving our small-town character even as we grow. And our Mary Riley Stiles Public Library, one of the beloved institutions of the city, the budget does increase the hours of operation from 56 hours per week to 58 hours per week, targeting those times during the weekend that the public has expressed the most desire for additional hours. We've built into the budget $80,000 of council contingency, so as we're considering other council initiatives, including the option of increasing library hours further or funding some of the other special events and other elements of the community energy plan, we'll have some funding to begin working on those initiatives as well. We do have significant investments in the CIP and our park master plans, and we also begin the effort of the design for the Fellows Park and the execution of those designs. So I've listed some of the big areas of focus in the budget, and this is a summary of how those dollar amounts stack up. Clearly, investment in our workforce and employee compensation is the largest piece of this proposed budget and reflects that priority. In addition to that, we have some costs that we can't control, such as our interjurisdictional contracts with Arlington County and Fairfax County, health insurance, the Transportation Safety Rapid Response Crew. To sustain that in the budget going forward is funded at the level of $360,000. The other initiatives that we discussed briefly in our overview are listed here as well. as the fee-supported positions. And then the last item shown here is the council contingency funded with $80,000. We'll have our session next week with a deeper dive on the capital improvements program, but a couple of just sort of the big picture on it. Investments in transportation total $93 million. Investments in our facilities, our fleet, and our parks, including a new front entrance to the Oak Street School, those total $25 million. All of these figures are over the 6-year planning horizon for the CIP. Our sanitary sewer utility is $24 million, and our stormwater fund has a CIP of $12 million. All of those geared towards the big 6 flood mitigation projects, as well as the green infrastructure projects that our PUC has prioritized. So $154 million over that 6-year period. $81 million of that is coming from grant opportunities that have been awarded. $26 million is debt financed, but that is principally in the out years of the CIP, with one exception, the sanitary sewer fund debt to purchase that new capacity that I mentioned. We would propose to fund that with debt so that the developer fees that we're expecting over the next several years can be used to amortize that acquisition. There are some items in the CIP that are currently unfunded, but by putting them in the CIP, it creates kind of a planning placeholder, and also I think gives us a step up for applications when we put them in with the federal government to apply for infrastructure grants. So I'll shift now to talk about some of our rates and fees that are built into the budget. So for the real estate tax rate, what is proposed is no change in the tax rate of $1.23. The City Council has reduced the real estate tax rate by 12.5 cents over the past 2 years to bring us to that $1.23 rate. I'll talk a little bit more about assessments and kind of what's going on with real estate in just a moment. For the vehicle tax, we're proposing a rate of $4.80. Now, that's a 50-cent increase over the current year. Last year, the council reduced the car tax by 70 cents. And that was due to kind of a one-time supply chain related spike in the used car market. Next year, what we're told is that the average decline in value will be somewhere around 18.3%, so a pretty stark decrease in AV as we return back to more normal pricing. And so between that increase in the rate and the depreciation of vehicles, the average tax that is paid for a vehicle will decrease by about 8%, by just under 9% next year. So when we adjusted the vehicle tax, we were anticipating that was going to be a one-year anomaly. A little bit more on real estate assessed values. Overall, assessed values are growing 5.5%. And as I mentioned, we had growth in revenues, and one of those was in the area of assessed value relative to what we presented back in December. I think in December, we were projecting under 4% increase in assessed values. Now, the residential market has actually pretty much been aligned with what we projected back in December. In fact, there's a slight decrease in the residential valuations once they were finalized. So market growth of about 3.3% and new construction of about 0.3%. Commercial is where the growth has been. So multifamily has strong growth, as well as retail in the cities as that market sector has rebounded. So market growth of 6.6%, and of course, we've talked about the new construction, but that represents 4% of the growth in commercial. All in, the city's assessed value of real estate is $5.4 billion. These are some historical trends on our real property values. And just the thing to note in it as you get into the 2022, 2023 timeframe is that growth in the green part of the stacked bar, which is our multifamily sector, and that is an area of growth, as well as the commercial valuations. This year, the growth in the residential valuations is more modest relative to prior years. The median real estate tax bill, if rates do stay unchanged, that would represent a 3.5% increase or $364 for your average homeowner in the city. Also, I'll just note that the median home value in the city currently is $923,000. So that is a number that grows each year. The chart shows that median tax bill, which is the line part of the graph, and then the bar represents the tax rate itself. And as I mentioned earlier, the council has lowered the tax rate by 12.5 cents over the past 2 years. Just two last notes, one on the sanitary sewer fund, really just to deal with inflation and contract cost increases. We do request a 3% increase in the sanitary sewer fee. That would represent about a $15 per year increase for your average homeowner. And we'll talk about the CIP next week, but there is a very big CIP in our sanitary sewer fund. And then similarly in the stormwater fund, also just to address cost increases, both for compensation of employees and contractors, a 4% increase in the stormwater fee. That would be about an $11 increase for your average homeowner in the city over the course of the year. The CIP there is really geared towards flood mitigation and the green infrastructure that we mentioned earlier. However, state and federal grants will mitigate any fee increases that are needed in the stormwater fund. So what increases we anticipate we will need are really just driven by contract costs and normal inflation. So I'll end with just a note on some of the key dates going forward. On Thursday this week at noon, we'll have a budget town hall meeting in this room. People can come both in person or participate virtually. That noon time is something we started doing during the pandemic with a goal of trying to mix some times up. Sometimes might be more convenient for people than other times. So we're trying a noon time slot on March 30th. Then we'll have a series of our work sessions and public hearings that will take us through the month of April. We will have a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on April 21st, where we'll go through some of some of these issues in detail as well. The markup, the budget work session where the council does its markup, is scheduled for May 1st and final adoption on May 8th. And of course, the budget goes into effect on July 1st of 2023. So I'll close out by just noting that all budget materials, including our departmental budget videos, can be found on the city webpage that's listed here, /budget on the city's website. And the CIP also has a great overview video, but also the full CIP program is on the webpage. For people who have comments or public input, if they could send those to budget@fallschurchva.gov, we can make sure that those get answered. And then, of course, any comments that go to the city council can go through the city clerk portal as well. So either one will work. So I will stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions now, if it's the council's pleasure. We'll turn it over to our colleagues with the school board and allow that presentation, and then we can both answer questions.
I think that's probably the best way to go. Thank you, Mr. Shields, for that very informative presentation. Why don't we turn it over to our friends at the school system and the school board. Welcome.
So that's to advance. So
Okay, just to the right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see you all this evening. It's fun to be on this side of the podium, of the dais. I want to thank my school board colleagues in the back, and also give a special thanks to Ms. Krista Michael and Ms. Michelle Kopic, our budget gurus. They put countless hours into this budget and truly answer our questions, and we're just grateful for your leadership and your expertise. So thank you, Ms. Michael and Ms. Kopic, and of course, Dr. Noonan, but we'll get to Dr. Noonan a little bit later. My name is Laura Downs, and I am chair of the Falls Church City School Board, and I'm here tonight to just, I guess, first of all, really thank you for your partnership And it's because of this partnership that we've been able to develop a really effective revenue sharing agreement. And that revenue sharing agreement, in turn, has enabled us for 5 years in a row now to present a budget to you within guidance. Our partnership has also enabled us to build an amazing new high school and an exciting new commercial development right next door to that high school. So thank you again for this partnership and for your collaboration. Last year, we approved a strategic plan. It's a 5-year strategic plan going from 2022 to 2027, and it really brings to life our mission and our vision. And I'm not going to go through all of these slides in detail because I know you all have a long night ahead of you. Looking at our core values, and this came out of our strategic plan, we are a student-centered community, we are responsive and accountable, we promote academic success, we value inclusivity and diversity, and we provide community and connection. Our collective commitments, you can see them there, in very small type, and I won't go over those in too much detail, but these again ground everyone across the division in our common norms. And this is the portion of the strategic plan that really applies to our budget. These are our 5 strategic focus areas, and you'll see that the budget is tied to these focus areas: IB-infused teaching and learning, wellness, equity, and belonging, resource management and continuous improvement, communication and engagement, and investing in our people. And we're going to talk a little bit about enrollment now. As of September 30th, 2022, which is what our budget is based off from the state, our enrollment was at 2,534 students, and that's actually 32 students more than our projection. Our projection was 2,502. And that's because due to COVID, we decided to take a really conservative approach towards a projection because our numbers are slowly coming back, but they are slowly coming back. So our projection was on the more conservative side, and we ended up with more students than we had projected. In terms of student services, we have several segments of the community that need special services. Those include our economically disadvantaged students, our students with disabilities, students with a 504 plan, ESOL students, homeschooled students, and tuition students. Interestingly, you'll see the tuition students have increased by 20%, and that is mostly because of result of a lower enrollment. So because we have a little bit of lower enrollment than we did pre-pandemic, we've got some room for tuition-paying students now. And at the top, you'll see economically disadvantaged students have increased by 15%. Our social workers continue to work with our students to support our students and their families. And again, we have a great partnership with the Falls Church Education Foundation. The foundation does a lot to fundraise to help those economically disadvantaged students and their families. So we thank the foundation for their partnership on that. In terms of long-term impacts and current projections on enrollment, there's been a sharp drop in the number of births in Northern Virginia over the past couple years. Less people are going into DC to work. There's more remote work, so not as many people are needing to live close to the city. Another thing to think about with our enrollment projections, the new development that's coming online, those new developments are not factored into the enrollment projections. Our enrollment projections for next school year, our enrollment is projected to be at 2,552, which is 18 students over where we were on September 30th. Now we're going to talk a little bit about revenue. Again, for those who maybe of the public who might be listening, just to as a refresher, we did the school board and the city council and the general government and the schools met together in December, and in the spirit of cooperation, talked about developing an annual budget and capital improvement plan. And the operating budget at that time was to be within organic tax revenue growth, which at that time was projected to be 4.2% over the FY23 budget, which we know now from Mr. Shields is a little bit higher. We also talked about as two groups coming together that the budget should really focus on employee compensation to make sure that we're competitive within the regional labor market. It should focus on employee retention and recruitment. And I know the city council and the general government, as well as the school system, are both undergoing or have undergone salary studies. And we agreed, both bodies agreed that we really should make sure our budgets take into account those findings from the salary studies. In terms of local revenue, again, at the time in December, it was at 4.2, and according to Mr. Shields, will be a little bit above that, more around 5.2. And we talked about, and that is because we talked about with our revenue sharing methodology, that any revenue coming in over the projected revenue would be split 50-50. So again, we thank you for your partnership and that revenue sharing agreement, because that is critical for our success, frankly. And moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about state revenue here. The governor's proposal indicates state revenue will account for 15.9% of the school's revenue. State aid is projected to increase by 10%. Sales tax is projected to increase by 3.9%. And just a note that the General Assembly adjourned without adopting a state budget. They're coming back in the spring. And other revenue, we don't receive much revenue from the federal government. We're looking at just an increase of 7.5%. Our beginning balance remains unchanged at $450,000. And in terms of other revenue, we receive between tuition fees and then also our stop arm camera fees and some other items, that revenue totals $1.1 million. And we all know that Falls Church City Public Schools really relies on the locality for our funding, both the taxpayers, general government, city council, and we thank you all for your support. FCCPS relies on the city to provide 80.2% of its operating budget. 15.9% of the budget comes from the state, with the remaining portion of the budget, 3.9%, coming from the federal government and other grants. Okay, now we're going to look at expenditures. And as I mentioned before, we do have focus areas from our strategic plan, and our budget is tied to those focus areas from the strategic plan. And this is one of those, investing in our people. And this is by far our, biggest budget item. FCCPS is the largest public employer in Falls Church City with more than 500 employees. And retention and recruitment is really critical for us, and we all know that regional competition is tight now. It's very tough. To receive state funding for compensation, we need at least a 5% average increase for all employees. FCCPS continues to excel regionally and nationally. We have the highest SOL scores. We've had minimal learning loss, and we're back to pre-pandemic academic achievement. We're ranked #1 best public school system in the state, and we've had the greatest number of IB diplomas since the program's inception. And as I said before, the largest budget increase is definitely investing in our people. We are a people organization, and competitive compensation is really required to recruit and retain our employees. This advertised budget includes a step increase, a cost of living increase, a bonus for those at the top of the salary scale, and then a placeholder to begin to address the findings of our compensation study. As we said, it is to begin to address, because though we have not received the final report, though, we anticipate it to be probably close to 7 figures. So, and I don't want to step on Dr. Noonan's toes. He's going to address that in a second, but this will just be the beginning to address some of that salary study. And here is the compensation study. So we kicked that off in November of 2022, and we contracted that out. And I don't want to get into too many details, but basically looking at our market basket schools, which are the six major surrounding public school systems, looking at what our jobs consist of, and then comparing them to similar jobs in other systems, and just seeing where our salaries line up. And that presentation will be given to the school board next month. So in terms of benefits that support retention and recruitment, this first one is one that we are incredibly excited about and proud of. We are going to be providing 6 weeks of paid parental leave to all new parents in the school system. And as far as we know, we're the only school system in this area to be doing that. So we're thrilled. We are looking at a 10% health insurance rate increase. If it comes in under that, we'll put the savings towards employee salary increases. And another piece that we are extremely excited about and proud about is our health benefits. So ordinarily, someone who works part-time, maybe 32 hours a week, not quite full-time, would have to pay a higher rate of health care because they're not full-time. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure it's a level playing field, that all people, no matter whether they're part-time or full-time, will receive the same health care benefits. So that includes our bus drivers, our car drivers, our bus aides, our food service workers, Jesse Thackeray preschool staff, and first grade paraprofessionals. Okay, and here's just a list of compensation adjustments. I won't go through this in too great a detail, but again, a step for our eligible employees, a 2% cost of living adjustment. And some of this, again, was when we thought that we'd be looking at 4.2, so that some of these numbers may be changing, and Dr. Noonan and Ms. Michael may address that in a bit. Our compensation study placeholder, and again, you know, that this is going to be, we anticipate, several years to bring everyone up to where they need to be as a result of this compensation study. Longevity bonus for those at the top. And then something interesting I'll point out, and this was something that a creative idea that Dr. Noonan and Ms. Michael have, is to increase the sick leave payout for employees with 5 or more years of service. And what that is really about is encouraging our staff to hold on to their sick leave. And if we pay that sick leave at a higher rate, the hope is that they'll hold on to that sick leave, not take the sick leave if they don't need to, and then thus ending up that we will have less scramble to find substitute teachers. So that's where that's coming from. Okay, IB infused teaching and learning. This is our next strategic focus area. Using one-time and pandemic funding, we continue to support teachers of ESOL students, advanced academics teachers, and math teachers. We've used this money for contract length extensions and recurring funding to address the IB career program fees and software cost increases. And I'm actually, can I flip this over to Dr. Noonan for just a second, because I can't do this justice, our new Sustainability Academy, so I'm going to turn it over to the pro here.
Great. The pro wasn't available, so good evening. Just very quickly, I did want to spend a second talking about our Sustainability Academy as it relates to IB Infused Teaching and Learning, and it's something that we've been talking about since we started developing the new high school many, many years ago. And when we brought the high school online as a net zero ready geothermal building that was LEED Gold, we were able to convert that high school into essentially a teaching tool for the students that we serve. And so throughout the building, if you were to walk through, you would notice a couple of things. One is that we have continued to invest and reinvest in our hydroponics and our aquaponics program, but we also have built out curriculum that's associated with power and energy, alternative sources of power and energy, and there are different tours that you can go through throughout the building that have barcodes that give you a sense of how the building is being used as a teaching tool. By leveraging that, we are very excited to be working on building out the Sustainability Academy program, where students will actually come in and take a core sequence of courses that will ultimately end up providing them an opportunity to get a seal or some sort of cord that goes with their diploma and graduation, that they have a focus on sustainability and sustainable energy in particular. But the really exciting piece of this is that we're not doing it alone. We've been working very closely with some regional partners and are very hopeful soon to be able to announce that we have 2 or 3 potentially 3 different school systems that will be sending students to Meridian High School to take our courses in sustainability. And ultimately, our big win, we think, in the next couple of years is we'd like to apply for the Governor's School moniker as a Sustainability Academy and a Governor's School around sustainability. So really excited about that. But what you'll see in the slide deck tonight is sort of what the mission is and what the vision is, and how it dovetails really beautifully, I think, with respect to the IB program, developing the sustainable thinking, utilizing the United Nations areas of sustainability. So I'm going to turn it back over to Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Noonan. Okay. And the reason I wanted Dr. Noonan to just give you more information is you'll see on this slide here that is in terms of expenditure adjustments for teaching and learning. That is one of our bigger ticket items there, and that's to support our Sustainability Academy. Okay, our next strategic focus area is wellness, equity, and belonging. And again, using one-time money and pandemic funding, we've supported school counselors at the secondary campus and psychological services. And we've made investments to support students, teachers, and the community. We've had we're going to have responsive classroom training for pre-K through 5 teachers. We're going to install new playground equipment at Jesse Thackeray Preschool. We've had some contract cost increases with Securitas, who is the company we contract for our security guards in the front. And then very exciting, we are putting a great deal of money into lighting at the tennis courts. It's my understanding that Danny Schlitt is going to also put some money towards that from Parks and Rec. So looking at our next list of expenditures here, you'll see that the tennis court lighting is our biggest ticket item there. Okay, and then our next strategic focus area, resource management and continuous improvement, addressing cost increases really from increases in insurance. Our contract with the bus stop arm camera has increased, and then just maintenance supplies. And in terms of investing in our school facilities, the baseball field is the only athletic facility at the school that did not see any improvements as a result of the building of the new high school. So there are some well overdue enhancements that need to be done. So we're going to put some money into the baseball field as well as install a flagpole between the baseball and the softball fields. And then also looking at some adjustments to staffing based on enrollment. And so looking at this, the expenditure adjustments, the biggest ticket item there is our utility increases. Okay, so now I'm going to talk real briefly about staffing alignment. We see, looking at next year, we believe that we'll be moving 1 first grade teacher and 1 first grade para, as well as 1 third grade teacher. As you can imagine, from year to year, enrollment fluctuates. So if you look at here, if you look at first grade this year, we have 174 students, but the rising first grade class is only going to have 133. And then you look at the current third grade class has 188 students, but the rising third grade class has 157. So this is something that happens most every year, that grades change in terms of their enrollment. And I don't think we've ever had to let anyone go. We usually just have to do a little bit of shuffling depending on where the enrollment lands. And so this is just a summary, once again, of our expenditure adjustments. Investing in our people, of course, is the biggest piece of our budget. And then teaching and learning, wellness, equity, and belonging, and resource management. We did have some unfunded requests because our enrollment, it did increase by 30 or so students, but it wasn't a huge increase. Those positions that were requested that were asking for additional people or positions were not included in the budget. And then contract length changes will be reviewed as part of our salary study. And just a reminder, we are a people organization. 85.6% of our budget goes towards salaries and benefits. And this is, do you all want to talk about this piece? Okay. Yeah, sorry.
It's me again. Good evening. Just a couple of things that I wanted to share, and I want to first of all again say thank you for the incredible partnership that we've had over the last several years. The budget process. It was funny. We have a school affiliated organization group that I meet with once a month, and one of our traditional budget hawks when I came to the City of Falls Church Schools, I said to her, you never come to our budget meetings anymore. And she said, no, it's boring because it's so obvious what's going to happen because of the revenue sharing agreement that's come to play. And she said, there's no more fireworks over the budget, which I thought, by the way, was a really good thing, right? And so it's been really nice to sort of have this opportunity to smooth the work. There are a couple of things that were mentioned in the conversation from the chair tonight. that I just wanted to hit on for a second. And the first was the market scale adjustment, or the cost of living adjustment, plus the step increase for employees. One of the things that we are committed to overall in the City of Falls Church is to remain competitive with the region. And that's part of the reason that we're doing the salary study. And you'll notice on the slide who we're doing the salary study in comparison to. So it's Prince William, Arlington, Fairfax, Alexandria, and Loudoun counties. And those are typically those school districts that we either bring teachers in from or we lose teachers to, and that's why they were selected. But recently we had an opportunity to review the Washington Area Boards of Education fiscal year proposed budget salary comparison. And I want to make sure that you all know kind of where we are in the grand scheme of things. And I'll just briefly tell you what the total compensation increase is for a number of the surrounding jurisdictions that are in that study. Alexandria, with their average step in COLA, is increasing by 5%. Arlington is increasing by 5.26%. Fairfax is increasing by 5.22%. Loudoun is 5.8%. And Manassas Park are both over 6%. Because of the way that we have, I think, been really good partners with the City Council and operating within the guidance of the organic revenue, we built a budget that was based on that organic revenue, and we got to a point where we could provide a 4.3% increase to our employees. That includes the step and the cost of living adjustment. When you compare that to every other surrounding jurisdiction that's part of our compensation study and those that we're competing with, we're coming in far below what everybody else around us is giving. And so tonight I'm heartened and excited to hear again that there is additional revenue in the revenue share for us, because the amount of money that will be split as part of the revenue sharing agreement would allow us to increase our cost of living adjustment by a full percentage, which would put us right in range with all of the surrounding jurisdictions. And that's really important, particularly right now as we're working on our compensation study. What we're finding in our compensation study is that we are we're close to the market average. And I want to take just a second to talk about the market average. For a second, but before I do that, let me just say that April 18th is the date that Siegel Corporation or Siegel Company will be doing the presentation for the school board to share with them what the results of the compensation are. But the way that we're looking at the compensation study is really an important piece, because I know that the general government is also looking at a compensation study. And when we approached this work, one of the things that we were really clear about with Siegel was that we wanted to be between 95% and 100% of the market average in the area of Northern Virginia. We are in some places at 98%, 99%, and we are at some places between 70 and 80% of the market average. Nowhere in that conversation did we ever say we wanted to be number one. We said that we wanted to get to the average. So one of the things that we're experiencing that I think the general government is also experiencing is that for us to be able just to get to the average market scale is going to take some additional funds. So the idea of us being able to gain a little bit of extra money through the revenue sharing agreement and being able to give that extra 1% really puts us in a place where we can at least maintain where we are in the general area of Northern Virginia. It certainly doesn't bump us up because other surrounding jurisdictions are giving more than 5%, but it certainly gives us an opportunity to remain somewhat competitive. So I wanted to say that up front. And then I also wanted to, again, just sort of say, I remember our meeting in December and sitting together and coming in, and as I recall, there was a little trepidation because maybe there was some back and forth between some of us about, we really need 7% or 8% to make the school division really work and operate wholly. And we got to the table and I said, just to take the wind out of the sails, everybody, we're going to come in at guidance like we always have. And we did. We did come in at guidance, knowing that throughout the period of time when we came in originally in December and January, that there could be some changes in the way the revenue came in. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. So that's just a little bit of information. The big point that I want to just kind of put one more dot on and one more cross of the T is that right now, without the additional revenue, we do not remain competitive in the market regionally in our employee compensation. With the additional revenue, it holds us steady. Again, it doesn't move us up, but it at least holds us steady, and that's really important to us. And again, we'd invite you to come to our compensation study presentation on April 18th, because we are going to get some good information that will be really helpful for us to think about how we're going to organize our salary scales going forward, and look at career ladders for employees and the like. So with that, I will turn it back to, maybe you want to take it home?
Yeah, just
all right, I'll just take it home. All right, so in closing, Virginia mandates that the superintendent has to provide what's considered a needs-based budget. And we've been able to do that fairly successfully. But each time I've presented it, I've always said that we have these unfunded and unmet needs. But again, because of the revenue sharing agreement that we have in place, I have committed our team and I've committed ourselves to live by the spirit of that. Our advertised budget really does reflect, in the end, what our highest priorities are. And if you look at that budget presentation that Chair Downs just shared, you'll see that our number one priority is the people in the system. And one of the things that we know about the City of Falls Church schools is that when you ask parents, what do you love about our schools? It's always the teachers, oftentimes the health aide too. But definitely our teachers are there and front and center and working hard. So we've got to work really hard on their behalf to make sure that they are compensated appropriately. Again, we fell within organic guidance and are excited about the opportunity to grow. And our overall budget, when we put this presentation together, actually grows by 5.1%. And that will be 6.1% with the additional revenue. The local funding will be going up, but our state revenue increase plus our federal fees and other fees allow us to grow at a little bit greater rate. So here's the budget calendar. Nobody will be able to read this from where you're sitting, but a couple of points to be made here. One is that the school board has done an incredible amount of work on this budget along with staff. We've been at this since really September, October, when we started meeting with our staff. In November, we had one of our first meetings when we talked about enrollment projections. We've held public hearings, we've held public comments, we've done budget work sessions, we've answered over 40 budget questions for the school board, and we've done our diligence putting the work in on the front end. And I know some of you have been able to come to our meetings and really appreciate you being there and engaging early. So with that, we'll just wrap up with where do you get more information. So anyone who's watching and wants more information about our budget, 100% transparency. It is on our website along with all of the budget questions and answers that have been done. We continue to hold meetings talking about the budget. We've been out in the community talking about the budget. We've been in schools talking about the budget. And again, if you want information, you can go to our website to get that information. And with that, we will just end and just say thank you one more time for your diligence in this process. But please know that this is no longer the superintendent's budgets. This is now the school board's budget. They adopted it as their advertised budget. So the questions that you have really should be, I'll help answer them, but they are directed to the school board since they have gone through the hearing processes and the like to put together their budget. So with that, I'll back away and turn it back over to the city manager for questions.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate all the fine work that went into and all the difficult work that went into putting these budgets together. Why don't we go ahead and open it up to questions or comments from council, either for the school folks or the city side. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I think it's going to be a pretty easy budget year then. Now, okay, Ms. Leon?
I have one to start off with, but I think I have a couple that I'm formulating up here. But Dr. Noonan, a question for you. That compensation study, does it cover the full range of positions that are under your stead? Is it teachers and paras and custodians, or what's the scope?
It does. The scope is every employee. We were able to give a defined number of positions for them to benchmark off of, but every employee group will be benchmarked against that core group.
So when you say that your goal is 95 to 100% of market average, that's across all those roles?
Correct.
Okay,
Not number one, we're just trying to get to average.
just average. Okay, and you feel that with that, that'll be competitive?
It will keep us in a steady state. As much as possible, it will keep us at a steady state. If we give a compensation package that, or a step in a COLA that's the equivalent of 5.2% as opposed to 4.2%, that's going to be really close to what a lot of our colleagues are giving. But I also know that they're looking for more revenue, and so if they go up to 6%, we're losing ground.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because, I mean, the label competitive pay refers to, it implies it's pay that's comparable or better than the market value of that position.
Right.
So, which means it's higher than average.
Right.
All right. So, Mr. Shields, I'm going to sorry.
Feel free to ask him as many questions as you want.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. Let me wear my glasses. Wyatt, remind me, what is the city's goal? Is it consistent with 95 to 100% of market average? Are you shooting for less, or what's your goal?
So with our work with our compensation study, we were trying to hit the median of our basket of comparable jurisdictions. And so I would characterize it as 100% of the median. That's what we accomplished by implementing the recommendations from Evergreen.
Okay.
All right, other questions, comments? Ms. Connolly?
Mr. Shields, you did not mention my favorite thing, which is the retirement Ira Canlin dividend, but I'm assuming that is included in the budget.
It is, and it is noted in the manager's message, and it's in the budget document. But so $640,000 of avoided actuarial required contribution to the pension fund is the savings for the taxpayers in the city, and that's the equivalent of about 1.2 cents on the tax rate.
And have we broken even on that yet? That we made that investment 8 years ago?
So we have exceeded the 7% annual return on investment projection that we made when the investment was made. The monies that we've done to exceed that, we keep as a special reserve in the pension fund, and this is something you've been briefed on, but something that Ms. Mester worked on very hard with the chair of the retirement board. And then that sort of return on equity is now invested essentially in cash or cash equivalent investments to be a hedge against market declines. We had big market declines last year. If we have multiple years of market declines, then we would draw on those prior year surpluses. I think I've stated that right. It was fairly complex, the methodology, but I think that's a kind of an encapsulation. The goal was to protect that $640,000, even if the market goes up and down. The last thing we would want is to have a recession, and not only do we have the normal ARC problem, but in addition, we've lost the $640,000. We really wanted to protect against that type of a situation. I think we did that pretty well.
The only thing I could add quickly, just sort of in a real short comparison, the initial endowment for both basic and police was $9.2 million, and the value of interest earnings to the city that are either being used or saved is 5.6. So not quite breaking even, but a very good return on the investment.
We're on the way to breaking even. And then another thing I just think of note, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, is that the commercial assessments are going up, which is nice to see, but we have not included that C&I tax that we talked about last year. So I think that's just important to note that when you're doing a comparison from other jurisdictions to Falls Church, we don't have a C&I tax in there and others may. And I think that's just important in the general comparison. And then several people mentioned
how we used to do budgeting and how we're doing budgeting now. And I have to say that this is a great improvement from when I first got on city council, and the presentation of budget was the beginning of a months-long battle. And this is much more collegial and much better for the whole city. So thank you for that as well.
All right. I guess we'll go down this way. Ms. Hardy, Vice Mayor Hardy.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Noonan and Mr. Shields. A question for both of you to start things off. As you all have said that we are a people business, what are the increases in FTEs across general government and schools? And Mr. Shields in particular, I appreciate that we are taking a couple of one-time funded positions and converting them into the budget, because I think that is a more sustainable way of doing things. But if you know off the top of your head, what is the total number of increase in FTEs?
So we do have an increase, and let me check in with Kieran, because part of the things we did with this budget is fund some FTEs who were funded in mid-year. We're at 237 FTEs, which is, 227 FTEs. Thank you, Kieran. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Noonan, and then I'll get back with you on the increase. What? That's what I said, 237.
So thanks for the question. Our overall impact, we are adding a 1.0 advanced academic teacher at Oak Street Elementary, but we are also reducing 3 teachers. So our net impact is actually a reduction of 2 teachers, or two FTE.
And how many positions do we have that are ARPA funded that we still need to take care of in the next year?
I have to get back to you. Okay. I want to, but the general nature of the ARPA funded positions are mental health. We've got a school psychologist, school social worker, a school counselor, and the like.
Yeah, no, all very important. It's just something that I want to make sure we keep in mind.
I want to make sure you got where they work.
And what's the total number of school employees compared to the 227 in general government?
I think we were right about 500. Or 501, I think, the last time I looked.
Okay. Mr. Shields, going back to your deck. Is this, I know you noted this was the first year, or we had some declining debt service. Is this the first year that we're seeing declining in debt service compared to our peak years? Is this the beginning of the down of the hill?
Ms. Bawa, do you want to answer that, just in terms of the trends on debt service?
I know we have Mary Ellen Henderson debt rolling off next year.
That'll be in, yes. And then we
FY25.
have payout of other debt in 2026. Okay. I think that is the Mary Ellen Henderson and other debt.
Is this the first year we're seeing declining debt service, though?
Correct.
So that's good news.
Right. And also, this is the 4th year of the ground lease payment that's built into the capital reserves.
Okay. Continuing on, when we do deep dive in work session, Mr. Shields and Ms. Bawa, I'd love to see the real estate assessed values and be in comparison with our neighbors. Normally, we kind of look at what the regional picture looks like, and I think that would be helpful to understand how we compare for both residential, commercial. I did note that on slide 16 that we've broken out commercial into multifamily, which I know traditionally we've been assessing as commercial, but I do think it's healthy to note, for example, multifamily in the past 2 years has nearly doubled. So we've been building a lot of multifamily rentals, but that's clearly made an impact to our total real estate value. So thank you for breaking that out. I think that's it for now for me. Thank you both for the presentations.
All right, Ms. Hiscott.
Yeah, just to follow on, the multifamily has increased at a rate that has not, overwhelmed our schools either. We haven't increased our school population at that same rate that those multifamilies have grown, which, has been a point of discussion over many, many years. 2 questions along with that, showing the real estate assessment in local jurisdictions. We show the average resident's going to be paying $11 more in stormwater, $15 more in sanitary, $364 more in their home, and then their car decreases as a percentage. Do we have, can we get to a number that says this is what the average resident has? I know there's obviously a wide variety of numbers of cars and average assessment, but it would be nice to kind of have that as an average dollar amount as well. So here are all the increases, here's what the average decreases, so can kind of net that out. That'd be great. I know it's a little challenging, but that would be great. And then another question on the rapid response crew that we've funded for this year that I don't believe we had an opportunity to hire yet. So it'll be I think we funded it for a full year. We won't have a full year of expenditure. So is it going to be some kind of blend in this next operating budget of carryover of dollars from ARPA dollars?
Well, we're hoping to have that team hired by the beginning of the fiscal year. So we are budgeting for it for the full fiscal year in '24.
Okay, and carryover from this year, we have 6 months we budgeted for this year? And
So-
we'll have expended not a full 6 months.
So we'll have a discussion with the city council about the current year's underspending due to vacancies or for other reasons and allocating those to needs in the city. But I think that'll be a future discussion. I think that'll probably be a May kind of final budget amendment for the year type of discussion.
Okay. And then, Dr. Noonan, just confirmation that those numbers you cited from Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, those are all already there, projections for this fiscal year, comparable budget.
That's correct. It's from the 2024 proposed budget salary comparison from the Washington Area Boards of Education Guide, or the WABE Guide.
Can you say that again? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you.
Sure.
And that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan?
There are two things that I would like to become more comfortable with in this budget, which has many fine attributes to it. One is I'm a little fuzzy on compensation for the school staff compared to compensation for the city staff. Now, I know we have consultants and information has been shared here tonight, but I guess I would like to, at the end of this budget process, be able to say, or at least understand, what equity in pay means relative to a typical city employee, senior planner, or a custodian, and a typical schools employee. I don't think we've ever really done that explicitly, and I feel like as we get further down the road, that is something that requires some attention, because I think it's important that we communicate to everyone that we value all of our employees and the work they do, and we have high expectations on both the general government side and the school side. So that's just a, I guess, request for information, I suppose, as much as anything. The other is, it's good, very good. Thank you for the regional comparisons on compensation. As we go through the process, I would like to know, if you know something now, all the better, but usually it doesn't come clear until a little bit later on, what the other jurisdictions around us are doing in terms of their tax rate. The missing tooth in this budget is that we're not sustaining the momentum of reductions in the tax rate that we have established over the last couple of years, at least certainly last year, in a very good way, I think. It helps promote harmony in the community, and I know we all like harmony in the community. So I would like, at the earliest possible opportunity I've read in the newspaper what Fairfax appears to be headed, the direction they appear to be headed on their tax rate. But I'd like to know, other jurisdictions that are closer to us in size, and just as an informational item, to be able to tell our constituents that we are, keeping pace with our neighbors regionally, or for some reason this year we're not going to do that because we have many other needs. I'd like to see a progress dividend declared in the form of a slice in the tax rate. I understand that others want to see that progress dividend invested in services and activities that general government is obliged to do, and in some cases needs to do a little better, or needs to do better if we can hire the people to get the work done. So those are two questions, I guess, not for tonight's answering, but just to put them out there. The one thing in the school's presentation I thought was interesting, and I'm just curious how you all read it. The number of pupils who are in the lower income quadrant. There was I think, increase of like 15% or something on the chart, and I'm intrigued by that because we spent a lot of our time talking about affordability of housing and how people are being driven out, and, you know, the new apartment buildings that we've built have a certain number of affordable units, and that's something, but it never seems to be enough on our side that we're doing, you know, whatever it's needed to attract lower income folks to the community. And yet, somehow they're turning up at our school system, and I'm just curious as to where, you know, where they're coming from. Are we getting better at identifying them? Where's that data, you know, coming from?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking it. I think affordable is probably a relative term, and especially in Falls Church. But I will say that one thing we need to do over the next couple of years is monitor that number. And the reason that we need to do that is you may recall during the pandemic, all students in the City of Falls Church schools, regardless of income level, got free lunch and free breakfast. So there wasn't necessarily a requirement that everyone qualify, quote unquote, qualify for free and reduced lunch. This year, that benefit is gone. So what we're seeing is we're seeing families fill out the form again. So I'm not sure where that number is, but it could be an increased number of folks that, you know, lost their jobs during the pandemic and now qualify. Hard to say, but it is a number we're going to watch pretty closely. I did want to, if I may, Councilmember Duncan, just sort of comment on your question regarding equity. And I know that you've sort of asked for information, and I think that Mr. City Manager Shields and I can pull that together. I think one of the things that's complicated in our two different salary studies is the language isn't exactly the same. So in the language of the general government's process, they're calling it the median, and we're calling it the average. But I think we're both trying to achieve the same thing. We're trying, at least on the school side, we're trying to get between 95 and 100% of the average or median. And then the general government is trying to get to 100% of the median or the average. So I think we're trying to accomplish the same thing. I think the language just might be a little bit different. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we're seeing in our data that's really interesting is there's a compression, and this is probably more information than you probably want tonight, but there's a compression around the salaries in the multiple divisions that we're looking at. So within a range, we could be 1 or we could be 6th. It just depends on another $1,000 or whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is with respect to our compensation study, we're trying to get to between 95 and 100% of the median median salary, just like the general government is.
Okay, well, like I say, at the end of the day, it would be nice to land at a place that's easy to explain to folks. Oh, golly, what was my other question? Fiddle. Had it in my head and it slipped away. I'll come back to it a little bit later. Thanks.
Mr. Snyder?
Thanks very much. So I want to ask both managers, both of your budgets were built on a 4.2% organic revenue growth. Is that right? I mean, that was the guidance provided.
So that was, when we began the budget process, that is what we were working under.
Right.
And I will just state that with the initiatives that we were trying to fund or that the council had already partially funded in FY23 and sustaining those into 24, we knew that that was going to be a challenge. And so I will say that that was the initial planning number, but that was a very difficult budget constraint, just given the rising costs that we are grappling with on the general government side. I'll state that. So I'm answering your question, but also kind of sort of coloring it just a little bit.
So let me ask the chief financial officer. So apparently the good news is that we're ahead of the 4.2 organic growth number. Is that right?
Correct.
Where are we?
We are a little over $1 million, and we can provide all the details as
Okay,
part
how
of the
about
Q&A.
in percentage terms? It's 4.2. What is it now?
It's a little above 5.3.
5.3. Okay. So the city manager, if I recall your slide, you said your slide indicated 5.25, right? All I'm trying to do is get comparative numbers so that we understand budget guidance versus where we are today. So, and let me ask,
If I may give a little bit, a longer response.
Sure.
So the 4.2 was built with 3.9% in real estate, and then other tax increases. That was back in December. And now, all general, so the split, the revenue share is between the tax revenues, right? So the general fund tax revenues over the fiscal year 2023 is a 5.6% increase as compared to the 4.2 that was done in December.
I like, we're going higher here. That's a good movement.
So
No.
that
Okay.
is all the general fund revenues, tax revenues included.
Okay.
However, if you split it 50-50, then the increase that comes to the school side, if you see that slide, the number, the 23 number is 46 million for the general government, and then 47 million. There's a slight difference. So if you do a 50-50, that percentage tippers a little bit, changes the point, the decimal point changes a little bit.
Okay.
So that becomes 5.3.
Again, I'm trying to achieve equivalence to the projection when we agreed to the budget guidance was 4.2%.
That's correct.
That we would have total organic growth that then would be split between the city and the schools based upon the revenue sharing, right?
Right.
So what is that number today? What is the equivalent of 4.2% in December when we established the budget guidance? What is that today?
It's a 5.6%.
5 point?
6.
Okay. So let me ask the school superintendent, if you continue to get 50% now of 5.6 as opposed to 4.2, will that be an adequate amount to fund as you discussed it, the compensation that would kick your budget above the 4.2%, the additional compensation?
If we get, I'm a little bit confused about some of the numbers myself. I think 5.6 is the total revenue, but we don't split all of the revenue in the city. There's some that's peeled off. So our portion represents 5.26, not 5.6. So if we get the 5.26, which is the organic revenue, which we've all agreed we would share, that would certainly help us in the compensation arena. I think the concern is that based on what I'm seeing from surrounding jurisdictions, they're giving around the same amount, which will hold us in a steady state. So we won't necessarily lose ground. We won't gain ground either.
Okay. I think that answers my question. All I'm trying to do is there was great praise for the revenue sharing tonight, that both presentations said we met our targets when they were set in December at 4.2%. Do both sides of the budget continue to stay within the organic growth as we now know it?
So I'll
including the additional compensation that you talked about toward the end of your presentation.
I'll answer for the schools. As I mentioned in December, we really needed somewhere between 7 and 9% to really be successful in the compensation study, in the work that we're trying to accomplish. But as good partners, we came in at organic growth. So anything that gets us closer to 7 to 9% is absolutely helpful to us. So we definitely will use those funds towards compensation to remain competitive.
So are you saying your request is above the revenue sharing agreement?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
I'm saying that we'll continue to live by the revenue sharing agreement.
Okay.
But every dollar that comes in organic growth, I think we would expect to share. That's what I'm.
Got it. Okay. That's what I'm trying to establish tonight. What is the equivalent to the 4.2% that both of our managers said that they were working to keep within? Now, Wyatt, I think, has said he had to go above that, but we also know that organic growth has grown above the 4.2%. And I'm just trying to establish that both sides of the budget will continue to be within the organic growth per what we discussed in December. And the good news for both is that the organic growth has gone above the 4.2%.
That's right.
Okay,
And we'll
good.
still live within what is up there, which is 5.26%.
Okay, thanks very much. I had one other question. I saw where the schools had approved a resolution on collective bargaining. Had that been discussed with City Council before? I wasn't.
It hasn't been approved yet. It will
Okay.
go for second reading tomorrow night.
Okay.
But I'll let the chair answer that.
I just wondered if it had been discussed with the schools in view of our cooperative approach to things.
We've
If
had
it
a
had been
number of
discussed with City
conversations
Council.
internally about it. I don't know that the council has gotten a briefing.
Okay, just a request that we do, preferably before the action, but certainly we understand what the potential ramifications might be.
Happy to send the resolution. Actually, it's up on board docs, but we'll send it to everybody on the council tomorrow.
Okay, and I would appreciate a fulsome discussion at some point. Thank you.
All right, why don't we try to wind the conversation down? I know this can go on for a long time. We do have other things on the agenda, and we do have other opportunities to ask additional questions, but I have a few as well. Let me start with Wyatt. What's that? Well, no, everyone else is, this is my turn to ask just a couple things, but I do want to start moving on. Okay, thank you. Wyatt, this tourism and the grant administrator, $130,000. Just give me like 2 seconds on what is that and how long does that go on for?
So the tourism grant, this is something that the EDA applied for, and the council has actually already appropriated it.
Yeah, I remember some of this talk a while ago.
So that is to help with marketing the city as a tourism destination. And we'll be using, really in partnership with the Virginia Department of Tourism. So we're kind of using their website and trying to guide people to use our hotels and our hospitality and our restaurants.
And is this a long-term position or what's the?
So now the tourism position, there's not a position associated
The grant
with that.
administrator?
So that's a different thing. So the
Okay.
grant administrator is really to address the many opportunities for grant dollars that exist today because of the bills that were passed by Congress in the last 2 years. So we are administering, as the CIP notes, $81 million of new grants. I think we're in the process right now of administering about $47 million of grants. And so it's just a big growth area in the city. So we're asking for additional grant administrative support. That is funded in part with grant dollars because
Ironically,
what's that?
I said it's ironic, isn't it? Or
Well,
or
we
grant-
can, you can charge some of your overhead to these grants, and so, but not 100% of it. And so some of it is being funded by local taxpayers as well.
And that's $130,000. Is that what the annual cost is for that person?
So salary plus benefits.
So that's a pretty steep hire.
Yeah, it's an important, technically rigorous position.
Got it. Okay. And that's a full-time permanent position.
It is, and that's what's proposed here, and that's largely just because of the size of this capital program that you see. And we also anticipate that the opportunities for these federal grants, it's going to last for another 2 years or so, and then we'll be spending it over, probably the next several years. So we typically, for these positions, many of these like building permit fee positions, the ARPA positions, and this grant administration position, we try to plan at least 3 years ahead. So we think we can sustain it for at least 3 years. After that, we have to see what the economy is doing.
Got it. On the library, doing the math, it looks like it's $400 an hour to extend the library. Does that sound right to you?
So I know a great deal of discussion and analysis went into that, and it's much more than sort of the basic discussion that you've said, and we can talk about that in more detail. The basic piece of it is we don't hire temps just to come in and turn the lights on. Our library staffing, we hire professionals who do a whole host of things. So if we're going to keep the library open, we hire people that are going to do the whole suite of customer service to serve our patrons.
But aren't they just essentially the current employees who work, some of which will work 2 hours more?
So it's, I think there are additional positions that are part of the overall proposal from the library director and their discussions with the library board.
Okay, I think it'd probably be good to hear a little bit more about what's going on with that. Let me ask just, I know everyone else has asked about this, I think because it was a bit confusing how it was explained, at least to me. Both of your goals are to be essentially at the median or, 90 to 100% or thereabouts of the median compensation. So just as an example, if the range of compensation is 50 to 100, the average would be 75. Let's say the median would be 75. That's what you're aiming for, 100% of 75. Is that right on the city side?
That's correct.
So 75 is what you're looking at. Same thing for schools?
Just to be clear, ours is more around the mean. So our compensation study group has given us the mean of the surrounding jurisdictions, so we're trying to get to between 95 and 100% of the mean.
Okay.
So same idea.
What's that?
Same idea, just a different calculus.
Okay, and your basket of jurisdictions is 6, close in 6? 5, close in 5. Why? What's yours?
So we had our consultant used a slightly larger basket, I think of 10 jurisdictions.
Okay. I mean, I would just suggest for both of you all at some point get together on what jurisdictions you're using, because if you use like Arlington and Alexandria, you're going to get a higher number than if you use Prince William County or someplace farther out. And I think all of us up here, most of us, if not all of us, would want to see fair compensation all the way across the board for everybody, not a little bit different here, a little bit different there. And so I think it'd be useful to use the same basket of jurisdictions or comparison groups for both models you're doing or analysis.
I'll leave that to the city manager. I will tell you our methodology was who are we losing teachers to and who are we getting teachers from? And that was the main reason that we used the 5. So, but I understand what you're asking.
Got it. I mean, it just seems to me like basic fairness, just, seek the same level of compensation, equality, or whatever you want to call it, equity, for our employees on both sides of the aisle, or whatever you might want to call it.
Thank you. We agree in principle. This is highly technical work, and I'll just maybe we can, but the principle I agree with.
Maybe the consultants can just talk a little bit to try to even up the basket just a little bit. I know things are about to get started, but nonetheless, I personally would think it'd be useful.
And I don't know exactly which jurisdictions you're using, but some of them don't have schools, I would imagine.
Included towns.
Towns as well, so different.
That was going to be my question.
Fields has probably got Herndon and Vienna in there, but for the schools there, are part of Fairfax County.
I got it. Well, then maybe they're included within that basket then, because Herndon and Fairfax County for employees would be included within Fairfax County in terms of that would be part of the group that would be used. I don't take issue with that, because the schools include those towns, and the towns might be separately broken out for compensation. Nonetheless, it's the same geographical area, right, as you would be using otherwise. Look, I don't want to belabor the point right now, but I do think just having the same basic basket of folks to compare to is a useful and fair exercise to go through. And so I would suggest that. And let me get back to just salaries a little bit. I was under the impression that our teacher compensation was near the top, if not the top in the area. Is that not the case anymore?
We are around the top. It depends on where you are in terms of your education, your position, and the like. So you won't be number one if you're a bachelor's coming out of college with a teaching degree. There's another jurisdiction that's 1, we might be 2. However, if you've been with us for 10 years and you have a master's and 45 extra hours you may be 1 there. And others may be somewhere else. So we hit the 1 mark in a few spots, but we're not 1 across the board. We'd love to be 1, but economically it would be too much of a challenge, to be honest.
Got it. I understand in general there's going to be anomalies, there's going to be this or that here and there. My general impression was that we were pretty near the top in general. Is that a fair statement or not a fair statement?
I would say it's a fair statement in that the differential between 1 and 5 or 1 and 6 is really narrow. In some cases, it might be as little as $650. If we paid one person who, for example, is a teacher with a master's in 10 years, if they're in Prince William County, they might be making this much money, which is $600 more than they're making with us, but Prince William might be 1 and we might be number 5 because the 4 jurisdictions are between us. And it's a gradation of $100 here, $100 there. So
the
we're
band
really
is-
close.
The band is very tight within this
Very tight.
group of 6 or group of 5 or whatever it is.
In many cases, it's really tight.
Okay, and it sounds like that's not the case necessarily in city compensation?
I think generally our bands are wider,
Okay.
just as a blanket statement.
Okay. I think I would like, maybe my colleagues as well, would like a little more information about just kind of how all this works, what you're thinking about it, to make sure that we understand fully where we stand with relation to our competitors, where we want to be, where we're heading towards, and the like. I think it'd be useful.
We'd love to have you come to the meeting on the 18th, too, because that's when the company that's doing our compensation study will be presenting.
Got it. All right, thank you. Are there any other pressing comments anyone would like to make before we move on to our next topic or take a break? All right, thank you all for some very good presentations, very thorough and very informative presentations. We know we got a lot more work to do, a lot more conversations and outreach to have, but for the moment, this has been very helpful. Thank you all for coming out. I propose we take a short break, maybe use the restrooms, maybe like a 7-minute break, reconvene at 9:45. All right, we're staying in recess. We are back in session. So good evening again to everyone. We finished that item, and now we're ready to start business on the agenda at 9:47. So Madam Clerk, will you call the first item?
Yes, we have a second reading and public hearing on TO 23-01, ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Chapter 48 zoning as follows. Add a definition of outdoor dining to Article 1 in general, Section 48-2 definitions. Add a new Division 11, outdoor dining, to Article 5 supplementary regulations in order to create standards for creation and regulation of outdoor dining uses, and add references to the new Division 11 to 1, Article 4, Districts, Division 9, B-1, Limited Business District, Section 48-457, Division 10, B2, Central Business District, Section 48-490, Division 11, B3, General Business District, Section 48-525, and Division 13, OD, Official Design, Section 48-589, and 2, Article 5, Supplementary Regulations, Division 2, Off-Street Parking Requirements, Subdivision 4, Regulation of Use Types, Section 48-1003, Parking Requirements by Use.
I missed a little part of that. I hate to do this, and I really do. All right, let's get going here. What do we got? Who's up here? Why?
So I'll just introduce Ms. Laura Arsenault, who's our lead planner for this zoning text amendment, and she will take it away. I will also just note this item is before council for final consideration tonight, and the staff recommendation is approval of the proposed ordinance. Ms. Arsenault, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Once again, I'm Laura Arsenault, and I'm a principal planner with Planning and Zoning. City Council is requested to amend the zoning code regarding outdoor dining to retain most of the temporary zoning flexibility made available under the COVID emergency legislation. This proposed zoning code amendment was granted first reading by City Council on February 13th, 2023. It is now before Council for public hearing and final consideration. Please note there are no modifications to the proposed zoning ordinance text since the first Council reading on February 13th. As a reminder, the proposed code amendment includes only language for existing and future outdoor dining applications on private property. As a separate administrative item, staff will develop a process for outdoor dining that uses that currently exist or will exist in the public right-of-way. Once again, on February 13th, Council referred Ordinance TO 23-01 to amend the zoning ordinance text to clarify and make permanent provisions for outdoor dining to the Planning Commission and the Economic Development Authority. For recommendations, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the proposed text amendment during its regular meeting on March 15th, 2023, and voted unanimously in support of the proposed change. Further, on March 7th, 2023, the Economic Development Authority held a regular monthly meeting, and staff presented the proposed outdoor dining zoning ordinance amendment. The EDA unanimously supported the proposal. Further, as Mr. Shields mentioned, staff recommends adoption of TO 23-01 based on the following. 1, the popularity of outdoor dining. 2, the importance of providing certainty for business owners. And 3, the desire to provide flexibility in required parking to accommodate outdoor dining. Since the March 13th meeting, staff completed the following outreach to the community and businesses. Staff hosted a daytime meeting with restaurant owners, created a city webpage to provide the public with information, distributed a one-page flyer to all the restaurants, and engaged with the Economic Development Authority and the Chamber of Commerce. Timing on this application, we first met with you in a work session on January 9th, 2023, and also work session on February 6th. The first reading, as I mentioned, was on February 13th. The community meeting with the restaurant was on February 21st, and we went through a Planning Commission work session on March 1st. We presented to the Economic Development Authority, as mentioned, on March 7th, and got unanimous approval from Planning Commission on March 15th. Tonight, we're here with you now on March 27th, and we're looking forward to a 6-month report out on outdoor dining in September of 2023, and outdoor dining of public analysis in the right-of-way is to be determined.
The temporary COVID local zoning measures are set to expire March 31st, 2023. If the proposed zoning changes are still under review and not approved tonight, staff would recommend suspending zoning enforcement for existing outdoor dining while the proposed changes remain under review. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Again, this is unchanged when we heard it last, correct? And in the meantime, you've spoken to the chamber and restaurant owners, businesses and the like, and I see no one's here. Are there any major objections that have been lodged with staff?
Not at this time, none that we've fielded.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments from council? Vice Mayor Hardy?
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Arsenault. So following up on Mayor Tarter's comments, so I think we have 13 outdoor dining in our establishments in our restaurant community. I know that there aren't largely concerns with kind of the local proposals, but how are they coming along with state and federal?
We're going to take that on a case-by-case basis as it's specific to each property that comes in. Okay. So as they need to meet our zoning requirements, we will work with them to update state and federal requirements.
Okay. Have we started getting in touch with all 13 of them now?
We've reached out to them already to let them know of this process and that of, the enforcement that would eventually come. And like I said, we're just kind of waiting for the applications to come in.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Any member of the public? I know there's not much in the audience. Maybe there's someone on the internet wish to speak to this matter. Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of TO 23-01 as previously read by the city clerk on final reading.
Don't you have to read all that? I'm pretty sure you have to read all that, Dave.
No, that's exactly why I referred to the city clerk's reading.
All right.
Mr. City Attorney, is that an adequate motion? Thank you.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Hiscott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon? Yes. Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
And Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, council.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you, Laura. The next item is a request to reschedule a public hearing to April 10, 2023, and that is for TR 23-06, resolution to amend special exception SE 04-0162, as previously amended through resolution 2012-01, to further amend certain commercial use restrictions on the ground floor spaces at 400 to 412 South Maple Avenue, Pearson Square.
All right. Do we have Mr. Shields?
So we do not have a staff report tonight. We do have a requested motion to reschedule the public hearing and final consideration, as the clerk just noted.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Any member of the public wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Do we have a motion?
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
I know that the applicant had come before us when we first heard this. Have we let them know that this is delayed a couple weeks?
Yes, they're aware.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move to reschedule a public hearing on TR 2306 to April 10th, 2023, and advertise the same according to law.
Do we have a second? Who's on the second? Vice Mayor Hardy. All right, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
And Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay, our next item is TR 23-12, resolution to amend and readopt the neighborhood traffic calming program previously amended and adopted by resolution 2015-08.
And I will just introduce Ms. Carrie Odanino, who will give the staff report for this item. The council has discussed this in work session, and there are a few updates that are highlighted in gray in your staff report. And I will also note that Mr. Stoddard is participating virtually for the last item, and for this item, I forgot to introduce him for the first item. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Odanino for the update, and the request for council is to adopt this update to the NTC manual tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Hi, I'm Carrie O'Nino,
Good evening, Mayor Tarter and members of City Council. So council is requested to adopt staff recommended updates for the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program Handbook update. Updates are in accordance with the council's adopted work plan and focus on roles and responsibilities and communication. All new language in the staff report and recommended changes to the 2015 NTC program handbook are highlighted in gray. In terms of process to date, a page turn was held with a CACT representative on March 16th to review and incorporate council feedback and any previously unaddressed CACT recommendations. Changes made include additional updates to the roles and responsibilities section, a clarified voting section, and a solutions development section. Those updates did follow a council text review that was held during the work session on March 13th to review and provide comment on staff's recommended program updates. Adjustments to language in the NTC program handbook to provide more specificity were made in the roles and responsibilities section on page 7. This section, along with the solutions development section on page 8, provide for more noticing around the formation of the neighborhood working group, communication around the development of concepts, and noticing before the start of construction. A voting and decision-making section has been added that clarifies voting procedures on page 8. This section lowered the vote threshold to advance projects and is now proposed at 51% of votes received, down from 67% with the last version. And then other minor updates and language tweaks were made throughout the handbook. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Conley?
Just one question. I'm sorry I can't point to it right in here. What are the changes as far as community engagement, community notification? Oh, I see here, neighborhood engagement. Is there an additional step in there to ensure that the volunteers are actually doing the work that they've said they're going to do on behalf of the city?
So there is the addition of having staff included in the email to the neighborhood, and then a sort of including electronic communications in addition to sort of the knocking on doors, and the email and phone number line on the petition itself. So that those are all additions to that that step.
So then staff will have the ability to step in if the volunteer isn't doing the job.
Yeah, so it gives staff visibility into what's taking place between the neighborhood block captain and the members of the study area.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, are there any other questions or comments? Vice Mayor Hardy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Odonino, for tracking the comments from our work session. Just the point that I was going to emphasize is largely, I think all the process improvements make sense, especially in light of the SWOT analysis that the CACT shared with us. I do think, though, that it looks like mobility for all modes as a policy document was done in 2014, so it's nearly 10 years. And so a lot of the concerns I think we're hearing from the CACT really just stems back to needing to update the policy. So between complete streets, talking about Vision Zero, I think we really just need to start with maybe updating that policy guidance, and then therefore all these process improvements will make more sense too. And so I guess where in staff's work plan is kind of revisiting mobility for all modes, incorporate kind of the new thinking on walkability and bikeability?
So I'm happy to take that one. Paul Stoddard, Planning Director with the city. One of the things we have flagged as an element within our proposed operating budget as part of that growing with vision and emphasizing core services is getting back into the habit of regular updates to our comprehensive plan chapters. As you noted, mobility for all modes, which I think some people still think of as a recent effort, was actually a 2014 effort. And so that is something that we want to make a list of our comp plan chapters, take that back to the Planning Commission and other stakeholder groups and identify which ones we need to review and revise first. Typically, our comp plan chapter updates take about 6 to 9 months from the time we kick it off until the time we get to final action. So we do want to be thoughtful in which one we put on the docket in which order.
And Paul, you said that in your budget request, we are recommending to kind of go back to the comp plan and do chapter updates? So we are taking care of that as a need?
Correct. That's one of the benefits we've had with staffing up, in part using permit reserves to pay for current planning services. Over the last couple of years, we actually sort of pulled staff off of long-range planning in order to handle development applications. We've now got our current planning team staffed at a more stable level, and we're able to get back to some of those core services of future planning.
Got it. So I guess my follow-up question that we don't have to answer now is, now that you're telling me it's going to be funded in the FY24 budget if we adopt it, I want to know when we're going to get to it. So note that for a future discussion, Mr. Shields. And then the second one is, I do think that as we think about NTC 2.0, it would be great for us to do some sort of communication about here's how the process works and refresh the community's understanding, like, hey, here's how you can request things through the traffic calming process, here's roles and responsibilities. Because I do think that while it's a heavily used program in pockets of our community, there are probably other neighborhoods that don't know about it, and I want to make sure that everyone has access to this. Thank you.
All right. Unless there's anything else, do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt TR 23-12.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any comment from anyone, anywhere? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. You have a comment?
Just a quick comment, and that is thank you for this thorough update. You really took our comments from last time into consideration. This is really good. Thanks.
All right, let's go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And Mayor Tarter.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda? We can read the motion, although I think everyone can read it fairly easily. Do we have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mayor, move the consent agenda.
Ms. Hardy on the motion. Was that Mr. Duncan on the second? I'm sorry. My apologies. Ms. Hiscott. All right, any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Abstain.
And Mayor Tarter.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. Thank you.
All right, let's keep on going. Any business not on the agenda? Standing regional committees? Councilmember comments that weren't made earlier? Anything anyone would like to say before we adjourn?
A question about an event on April 20th. The energy plan, is it? So it's ringing any bells here? I was talking about another group.
Community.
Another group that was going to do an event on that night, and I thought that night was already taken up.
April 20th in the evening would be the community meeting on the energy plans that Mr. Young is coordinating up at the high school.
That's it. And what time is that? Do we know? 7:30?
Either 7 or 7:30. I'd have to confirm the exact time.
That's what you and I were talking
I believe
about.
it's at 7, but I'm not. Our
Okay.
meetings are usually at 7, so I think it probably is at 7.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Anything anyone else would like to say before we adjourn?
Thank you for tonight's very nice events before our meeting and during.
Yeah, very nice evening all the way around, so.
Yeah. I agree. Thank you, council.
While we're on thank yous, I wanted to make sure that Paul and Jack Trainer got proper thanks for a T-Zone Town Hall last week. It was very lengthy, and they did it with such grace and patience that I think I really appreciate staff's work on that.
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anything else, or should we adjourn? You want to call it a night? All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you, council. Have a good night.